Hi, I'm Kylie.
Hi, I'm Hipsa.
Hi, I'm Mr. Long.
And welcome to The SLAP, the Student-Led Action Podcast.
Our mission is to talk to as many Colonia students as possible with different views and backgrounds to try and get a better understanding of our school's community and the different ways to bring about change for the better. This episode will focus on cultural identity and microaggressions.
We spoke to 6 Colonia students who came from various ethnic backgrounds to explain what their identity means to them and how perceptions of their identity from others affect them and other CHS students.
The idea for this topic came from one of our monthly Slack student voice discussions, where one of our members, Christia, a senior at Colonia High School, said,
That was when I struggled with my Asian identity, being told I am not Asian enough.
We hope this episode will help you to learn more about students from different cultures and better understand how microaggressions can affect individuals on a day-to-day basis, and to become more comfortable and understanding of everyone's unique cultural identity.
Hi, I'm Christia.
I'm Heshwin, and I'm a senior at Colonia High School.
I'm Imani, and I'm a sophomore at Colonia High School.
My name is Jonathan, and I'm in the sophomore grade of high school.
Hi, I'm Elias, and I'm in 9th grade.
Hi, my name's Natalia, and I'm a senior.
Okay, so to start off, I'll begin with the first question. Have you ever been in a situation where your cultural identity was questioned?
I have. I've been in a situation in which my cultural identity was questioned. I'm mixed, with a lot of different cultures and races or whatever. I'm Malaysian. And I've been in situations where people have told me or questioned what I am, saying you're not black, you're not dark enough, or you're not Asian, why is your hair like that, or your skin's so light. And I feel like people don't realize that there are people out there that are mixed, with different cultures and different things. So when people see someone who's mixed, they're like, oh, you're not this, you're not this. And even by people who are part of your own race, people who are black or people who are Korean, they're like, oh, you're not this or you're not this. It doesn't make sense.
For me, I would say it's the biggest thing is when people apply stereotypes and try to categorize me in it. So, for example, I am Asian, I'm specifically Indian and Singaporean, and those are stereotypically known to be very academic ethnicities. And when people are questioning my academic abilities or telling me that I should be doing better just because I am one way or the other, it really just makes me question about how these stereotypes come into existence and why they even exist in the first place.
I've been mistaken as a Mexican, and I've been told to go back over the border and a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Just throughout the years of me going through public school and stuff, I've just had a bunch of times where I don't know if I really fit in or not. Sometimes I'm an outcast because there's not really many people in this community of same culture as me. They don't really have the same thoughts as me and stuff because they're all on a set mind and they're all different, and we just couldn't agree on some stuff.
If you don't mind me asking, can you be a little bit more specific about what kinds of things you guys didn't agree on?
Well, we were pretty young, middle school, 10 to 13, I guess. So they were still pretty much developing their thoughts and their opinions and everything. They had a bunch of social media and stuff, all the internet, and they could just think of all the stereotypes against Asian people. And since I was one of the only Asian people in my grade level, it was kind of outcasted because there was no grade mixing together. And sometimes I felt powerless against them.
Being Asian American, I struggle a lot with my cultural identity. To clarify, I'm Indonesian American. So when I act more on my American side to my Asian friends, I sometimes am called whitewashed. To be completely honest, I am guilty of doing the same to my other Asian friends too, and didn't realize the effect that it had on all of us. We struggle a lot with our identity. I love both of my cultures. And to be told that I am not enough of one of them is really upsetting. And I put myself in a situation, I guess, where I question my own identity when I have discussions with more of my American friends who were born in America. They talk about traditions, gathering with family and having a turkey on Thanksgiving. I did not grow up that way. And that really questioned whether I am American enough, because I don't do those certain traditions that people in America are really known to do.
I can relate to when you said whitewashed. I moved from like 2 different communities, so I immediately started talking differently. So once they started hearing my different speech and like how I used to talk versus now, you start to compare yourself with like other people calling you whitewashed and all this other stuff.
Actually, I get that a lot when I tell people that I'm Hispanic or Filipino. They don't believe me, and then I've had friends that tell me that I'm white and that I'm not Hispanic or Filipino just because they don't believe me. But I'm actually very cultured, and I'm one of the first born here, actually. All my parents and my grandparents were all immigrants. It's like kind of the opposite. Like it's not that I get called like Hispanic, I get called white. So it kind of hurts because like I appreciate my culture. Not all Hispanics are like, I guess, tan color, dark hair. Like there's paler Hispanics, there's black Hispanics. I hate that people identify like one thing as like a certain skin color, a certain like hair color. Like you have to look a certain way to be part of that like culture or from that country. So it's really disheartening, and it's like it makes the situation awkward.
Yeah, I definitely feel you. You don't want to have to prove to someone that you are what you say you are, but at the same time, it's like they're not believing me, so now I feel like I have to prove something to them. I definitely feel that. So, speaking about just like your different multiple ethnicities and like identities, how do they relate to you? Like, what significance do these identities have for you?
Well, to me, I feel like I'm one of the, like a representative for my family. You know what I mean? Like, they immigrated over here from Vietnam when not very long ago. It was pretty recently, and I was like one of the firstborn Americans in our entire family, apart from my sister. I feel really strong about my background and my ethnicity. I feel like if I could represent one of my ethnicities, American or Vietnamese, I'd rather represent my Vietnamese heritage. I just feel like it really makes up who I am. Like if I was maybe from like a different race or something, I would be a completely different person. And I just think that it's really just me.
Probably just self-acceptance of I am enough of each culture, no matter what anyone else tells me, as long as I embrace those 2 cultures, and that I should not be worrying too much whether I am enough of each culture. I was blessed to be able to grow up with 2 different cultures and identify with 2 different cultures.
It's being one of the firstborn out of my family in America. It's like my tie kind of to my country, my family that's overseas. So I mean, like in my house, like Thanksgiving, for example, it's coming up. Like my Thanksgiving house it's crazy. So like we have noodles. It's something called ponce. It's a Filipino dish. It's like noodles and chicken and vegetables, like a ramen kind of, but like less broth. And then I have beans and rice because I'm also Colombian. Like it's like a whole big thing. So it's like, I mean, like I love my culture. I'm a cultural person too. Like I love understanding other people's cultures too. So it's like it's important to me to keep my culture too.
Personally, for me, I think when I was younger, I had a hard time coming to terms with my identity just because I just felt really out of place. I went to an elementary school that was predominantly white and not very diverse. So oftentimes I felt out of place and I felt like I had to hide myself or kind of not talk about my identity as much. Whereas now that we're in a much more diverse school, I feel a lot more comfortable, as I often find people who are more diverse and more accepting, I feel like, just because of their mixed backgrounds or mixed and diverse backgrounds in general.
I've been to school, I've moved a lot, so I've been into many diverse schools, many predominantly this or predominantly that schools, and I feel like in both, like some were more accepting, but in both, like like there's been situations in which like people still questioned my identity. Like I've been Like, people have thought that I was Hispanic or just Asian, or just, like, people have called me Chinese before, or said that I'm Hispanic, or that I'm lying about my identity, asked for proof, which just doesn't make sense to me, because, like, I'm my own person. I don't think that I should have to prove my identity and prove who I am to other people. So I guess that kind of, like, takes a toll on who I am and makes me question, like, where I come from and what I am.
How would you respond to people who kind of question your own identity? Because, and this is just like my own experiences. I know that I've been called like not Asian enough, or like, because I'm not East Asian. So, and when I tell people like, yeah, I'm of like Asian descent, they're like, oh, you're not Asian. And I'm like, yeah, I am. So it's kind of like, how do you respond to people who question your own authority, and what would you want to say to them to make them understand that you're also not just your identity, like you're not just one thing?
I feel like I would say to not immediately assume and not immediately judge just based off of people's appearance, because you don't know what goes on based on their real life. And I feel like you should, before you throw their opinions and your thoughts down someone else's throat, not knowing who they are and what they feel, I feel like you should just give them time to explain themselves, or not even explain themselves, to educate you first, or to let you know who they are and what they are first, before you try to judge them and make them feel like something that they're not.
I think also, just to add on that, I would tell them not to be afraid to ask questions. I feel like I take questions better than rude comments. So this is like, questions give us an opportunity to educate them and learn from each other, rather than comments just tend to degrade and tend to just make false statements.
Yeah, likewise with you. Like, I've witnessed it. I've seen people like calling out like South Asian people for like not being Asian. I just can't help but feel bad. Like, I like to stand up for them, because like they are Asian, and I don't get why they're being like discriminated, even by sometimes Asian people by themselves. Like, I don't get it. But I would say that to adapt to it, I would just like, since it kept going on for years and years, I just took it as a joke, and it just became solidified to everybody that I didn't care and it was a joke.
So by you taking it as a joke and like kind of making it a joke, do you think that actually helped you in understanding your own Asian identity, or do you think that kind of was detrimental to that? Because I know with other people, it's like making it a joke sometimes helped them cope and process with things, while other people use it as kind of a defense mechanism. So in your opinion, if you don't mind me asking, like, do you think joking about it has helped you process it and become more to terms with it?
I would say that the joking situation for me is definitely a way for me to cope with it, like to make it maybe not to seem so serious, but sometimes it just gets to me, you know? Like, I try to play it off as a joke and try to be funny and stuff, but it's kind of annoying. It kind of hurts to hear all the time.
So I feel like nobody should identify cultures with one certain thing, like one certain skin color, one certain like hair color. I feel like we shouldn't judge people, because a lot of people can be a lot of different things, like a lot of different nationalities or different heritages. So I feel like the way someone looks or acts, or even the food that they eat, I feel like that doesn't necessarily prove who they are or where they're from.
I would ask the person themselves, like, what will make me American enough, or what will make me Indonesian enough? Because like, there's no standard to living up to a certain culture. Each culture is different within itself, and not everyone experiences the same thing, and it should not be expected that everyone has the same tradition. Not every culture is alike in itself, if that makes sense. The only person that should be worrying about me is myself, so they shouldn't be questioning whether or not I am enough of one of my culture background.
So regarding that, do you feel like there's any true way to show your identity or prove that you are that one identity?
I feel like when it comes to that, it's all about just knowing who you are and knowing that you don't have to prove. Like, I've come to terms with knowing that I don't and I shouldn't actually have to prove myself to others. As long as I know who I am and I become comfortable with who I am and what I am, then that's all that matters.
And just to elaborate on that, I also feel like it's also our job to dispel any ignorance. I feel like people aren't educated to know about other races or ethnicities, and that's why they make assumptions and fall back on stereotypes. So if we are educating them and kind of spreading this information, hopefully one day we'll reach a place where this is not going to be an issue anymore.
So, what do you guys think, if anything, there's anything that we could do to make our school environment more accepting to those with varied and complex identities?
I feel like they have to teach them more about like culture and how like there are several different like cultures, and there's no reason to like differentiate and be racist toward them. Like we have to focus more about the racism that's gone in the past, because no one really understands it.
I think, as we mentioned before, education is a crucial aspect of this if we're going to be going anywhere moving forward. And I think our school is starting to take these steps. Like, for example, today we had like the Diwali presentation. I think that's a good way to introduce different cultures and races and what exactly is being, like, what's exactly happening. I feel like, again, education is the way that people are going to get rid of that ignorance and stereotypes that they often have.
Definitely. I feel like getting the word out there and educating people that there are people who are of certain races that you might not know about, or people who are of multiple races in one that you might not know about. So if you educate people and get the word out there, they'll be more understanding and not so quick to judge and throw ignorance.
I think that like for example, like the Hispanic heritage events that they do and stuff like that, just like those cultural events, appreciating the different cultures, having those type of events to celebrate every culture possible. I feel like those are the type of things that make me, for example, it makes me feel like my culture can also be expressed at school, like not just at home.
So is there anything else you would like to add about cultural identities or any kinds of identities and how they affect you, how they affect others, what you would like other people to know about?
I just think overall, I think it tends to be on us as like people who are different, I guess you would say, or more diverse than others, to be held responsible for what other people might say, like, oh, just be prepared that people might question you. Where I feel like it shouldn't be that case. Instead, we should be told that it's okay to educate others.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like some people are pretty hostile when it comes to people asking questions. Like, people get thrown off, or like they're insecure about themselves and their identity and who they are, so that when people ask questions or try to politely understand, people come off hostile. So I feel like it's on us to be polite and understanding of people who are unknowing of what we are and how we are, and to explain our differences.
We shouldn't judge people or judge a book by its cover, and definitely be more culture appreciative.
Be aware of what you say and how many things can hurt you, and how you may not even mean it in a racist way, but it could be racist and it could be offensive.
I know that there are a lot of people, like a lot of Southeast Asian people like me, that would be in America, but that would be like pushed down by like people, and they would whitewash themselves in order to like fit in. Like I personally, I had to do that in middle school to like, you know, fit in with people. And at this point in high school, I just don't care what people think anymore. I just live by my own rules and stuff. But I think that if everybody did that, like they just listened to themselves instead of listening to other people's opinions about them, I think that it could make a really big change in the communities.
So I want to take it back to Christia's initial statement about identity. For the two of you, you know, we just listened to you, both of you interview our members of SLAC, but for you two, have either of you been in that situation that she described where somebody might have questioned your identity? Was that something you could relate to?
I definitely have been in that situation that Christia has described before. Actually in the exact same situation, because she described not being considered Asian enough, and I was in that situation too. And it was funny because it was another Asian person telling me that I wasn't Asian enough, but they were East Asian and I'm South Asian, so I don't have like the stereotypical Asian features that most people think of when you think of Asian. And it was a kind of weird thing where I'm like, I wouldn't expect you, out of all people, to be like, oh, you're not Asian enough, because I would expect you to understand where I'm coming from. It really wasn't like that big a deal. It was just a passing comment, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, why you, out of all people, telling me I'm not Asian enough? You know what I mean?
I feel you. I haven't had people tell me that I don't look what I am, or they have said that I don't sound it, or maybe I don't talk like black or whatever, but no, I haven't really been told that I don't look it or I don't seem it.
Where do you think those questions come from? I mean, why do you think people even ask those questions to begin with? Because as I was hearing the stories from, our Slack students, I kind of wondered, where does this idea even come from that people feel like they can say, oh, you don't look like you're this, or in the case of you saying, Kylie, like, you don't sound like you're this. Where do you think those questions even come from? Why do you think people ask those questions?
I think there's so many stereotypes, and once it's created, the stereotype, people just take it and run with it. It's taken in movies, it's taken in TV shows, it's taken on social media. So I feel like once someone hears it and once it's spread around, it'll just continue forever, and that's what people will think of you when you tell them that you're a certain race.
Yeah, just going off Kylie's answer, I think that representation matters so much in these types of situations, because for a lot of people who aren't aware of a lot of different ethnicities and identities, like, media representation is the only thing they have to this world that they're not a part of. So when they see these heavily stereotyped identities of different races and different types of people, and then they meet somebody who doesn't fit that exact mold, it kind of comes like as a culture shock.
What was the biggest surprise that you had while interviewing our Slack members? Was there anything in particular that really stood out to you that you were either surprised to hear or really kind of like hit home for you? What was your big takeaway from our interviews?
I was surprised with how many people can relate to each other. Everyone was saying certain situations, and then other people were reminded of something that's similar that happened to them, and even in the same school, in the same community. So you see how repetitive things are and how big stereotypes really can be in our community.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that too, because I considered like Colonia to be a more diverse place, just in general terms. So I wasn't expecting like this kind of like ignorance from Colonia. So that was surprising.
And I think what you're both saying here is a good illustration of the fact that we can't assume that these stereotypes don't exist in people's minds just because you live in a certain area. Everybody everywhere can have internal biases and preconceived ideas about other people. And that's why it's so important that we take the time to talk about these things and really air these ideas out so we can recognize how they might exist in our community, our state, whatever it might be, to help combat them and deconstruct those stereotypes. What do you guys hope people who might listen to this episode learn from your stories and from the stories of your classmates at Colonia? What do you feel like is the big thing people should take away from listening to this particular episode?
I hope they learn like mainly how things are affecting people of different races. I hope they see the pattern and the way people are saying things to other people and how people are taking it, how people go home and think about it. So just mainly, I hope they're learning from it and can evaluate themselves with it.
Just to echo Kylie's point, I definitely feel like that's the main thing I want people to take away from it. And I just want them to just experience something new that maybe they haven't had to go through before, and just, open their mind to empathy.
All right, awesome. Well, that's the end of this episode, and we'll see you next month on Slap.
I can't hear you. He's talking and
They can't hear me because I accidentally muted myself. I was doing a conclusion. I'm keeping all this in. This is all staying in. Bye. All right, you can stop the recording.